Hey everyone, it's Saturday, January 9th. The time is 2:52 p.m. and the temperature right now is 3 degrees Celsius. This is the intersection of Bathurst Street and Queens Quay West. And I'm currently walking north up the east side of Bathurst Street. There's a look to the south towards Billy Bishop Airport. And just to the south of here is Lake Ontario. And the plan for this one is to walk north up Bathurst Street to Bathurst Station, which is in the Annex neighborhood at the intersection of Bloor and Bathurst. This is pretty much the same route that I took back around 8 months ago, I think sometime in May. And at the time that had become my most viewed video on this channel, although that was one of my older silent walks. So this time it'll be a somewhat narrated affair. And this is Lakeshore Boulevard. There's a look to the east. I think this is the old home of Omni Television. That's the Cross and Blackwell building, and that goes back to 1927. And just across the street is the new Loblaws, Joe Fresh, and Shoppers Drug Mart. There's also offices in this building and residences. That opened late last year, and that was originally a Loblaws warehouse that dates back to the 1920s. And I think sometime around 2000 it was abandoned, and that facade is all restored brick and limestone. Just to the west here along Lakeshore Boulevard is Coronation Park on the left side, and beyond that would be Exhibition Place. I think on my last walk up Bathurst, I was on the other side of the street. And there is the 511 Bathurst streetcar. Streetcar service was suspended on Bathurst starting in April of last year, and it just resumed, I think, on either the 3rd or 4th of January. There's a lineup to get into Loblaws. I imagine those waits to get into the supermarkets will just get even worse if the province does go ahead and implement the curfew that is currently being rumored as one of their so-called measures. I say so-called as I'm not that convinced it'll actually do any good. It'll probably do more harm than good. And this here is the Bentway. This is an underground trail that runs underneath the Gardner Expressway. I've featured it in a prior video to this. And these towers here are all part of the Concord Addicts City Place development. There goes a 511 streetcar northbound. That'll be heading up to Bathurst Station. And when they get to Lakeshore Boulevard, those streetcars, which is to the south of here, will turn west and head on over to Exhibition Place.
Bathurst Station. Please wear masks.
And this is Fort York Boulevard.
TTC.
And just on the left there is Fort York. I've talked about that in prior videos. And there's a look through the City Place neighborhood with the CN Tower at the end. It's always a nice vantage point. And just north of here, this overpass we're about to walk over that heads over the railway tracks has been closed for much of last year. And that's one of the reasons why the streetcars weren't running. There were some other construction projects along Bathurst as well. It's always a little weird to walk along routes that are supposed to be served by streetcars when there's buses running. So it's good to see Bathurst is back to normal, at least in a transit sense. There's a look towards Fort York. And there's a look east. And that would be the financial district off in the distance. I think this is around where the pipe dream proposal called Rail Deck Park would be, which is to build a large park space above the rail tracks. It's been said that if Mayor Tory is able to implement it, that would sort of be his legacy project, although the cost of it is quite excessive. There you can see all the different rail lines heading into Union Station, mostly serving GO trains. And on the other side you can see where they split. Well, maybe not, that car is blocking me, but the Lakeshore line stays on the left, and then the tracks branch right, and we'll head up, I think, to the Milton line as well as the Barrie line. I might be wrong on that. And here is Front Street, where this condo is on the corner. It used to be a Lamborghini and exotic car dealership. I remember always craning my neck in there whenever I drove by as a kid in my parents' car. And across the street is Stacked. That's a container market. It's designed to be a temporary market. It's only supposed to be there for a few years. It's also supposed to host various cultural and arts events. And then they'll pack up the containers, and that space is to eventually transform into a park and they would relocate the containers at another venue. And here's a future home of Farm Boy. This is a grocery store that's been popping up all over the GTA lately. A new location that's recently opened up in my neighborhood near Yonge and Eglinton. A lot of the retail spots in these new condos are far too big for smaller retailers to move in. And I think that's by design. They're sort of aiming at getting larger, more stable, corporate type retail occupants. And that's often to the detriment of the quality of the communities. As convenient as those big box stores are, I think we can all agree the fabric of the city is made up of the smaller businesses and the more unique places. And sadly, given what's going on lately, those are becoming a dying breed. It's impossible not to go on one of these walks through the city and notice all the struggling retail stores and vacant storefronts relative to what I saw in years past on the same roads. Hopefully, this kind of commentary won't be necessary much longer, and we can see things start to turn around. Maybe that's overly optimistic. And here is Wellington Street. So as the sign says, just to the right here is the entertainment district. If you follow Wellington into downtown, it'll take you there. Well, actually, Bathurst is, at least according to Google and other maps I check, the western border of downtown Toronto. And speaking of shuttered retailers, it's a bit of a sad sight across the street. And this is the intersection of Bathurst and King Street West that I'm approaching. On the left there is a place that bills itself as Toronto's oldest bar. That is the Wheat Sheaf. They closed down for 9 months, and there was a lot of rumors and speculation as to if they're closed for good and reopening as something else, but it turns out they reopened as sort of a revamped version of its former self. And that was early this year, and shortly after they reopened, all these restrictions kicked in. Now, like most of the restaurants in the city, it's pretty much takeout only. And that's not the kind of bar that would thrive under those circumstances. It's known more for its atmosphere than its kitchen. And this stretch here, down King Street West, is where you'll find a lot of the city's nightlife. So I think this walk should be about 3 kilometers in total. across the street there is St. Mary's. I think that's a Roman Catholic church. I'm quite horrible with my religious institutions. There's where you'll find Maverick Brewing Company. It's a local craft brewery. It's always good to buy your beer and drinks from the producers themselves or through small businesses rather than the LCBO or beer store. At least throughout the pandemic, they kind of need all the help they can get. And this is Bathurst and Adelaide. This is a one-way street. And just on the right is the Factory Theatre. I think if I know anything about this place, I think it's mostly known for Canadian productions. I think that's primarily how it got its reputation. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that building goes back to the mid-1800s, or probably more like the 1860s or 70s. I sort of have all these random tidbits of places floating around in my mind, so I can't always bring it up to the forefront of my memory as I walk by. Bathurst is kind of an interesting mix of low-rise residential and various kinds of retail. It's really kind of a hodgepodge of different kinds of developments. That white Chevy wasn't too happy with that cab. Neither is the car behind the cab now. This row of homes is slated for redevelopment, and will no doubt be turned into a condo. Right there where it says Sweaters and Snowflakes Food and Wine Bar Pop-Up. That used to be a soccer-themed pub. And there's a look down Richmond Street. That'll take you in towards the financial district. And the next intersection will be Bathurst and Queen Street West. Kind of nice actually having a bit of a blue sky in the background on one of these walks. We had what seemed like day after day of gray and gloomy weather, so it's kind of nice to see some blue after all of that. Just to the west of here is the West Queen West neighborhood. That runs along Queen Street West over to Dufferin Street. And there's the West Neighborhood House. Formerly the Christopher House. I think it's a homeless drop-in center of sorts. Here's a little streetcar turnaround loop. And a cop. Wonder if he's trying to bust people or if he's just taking a break. There's the local office of Chris Glover. He's an MPP, and I would guess by the orange in the background of the sign, he's a member of the NDP party. MPP stands for a member of provincial party, or provincial parliament. And I think the last NDP premier we've had in Ontario was Bob Rae. That goes way back to the early 90s. Is Car Street with 2 R's. As you can see, Bathurst doesn't really have a cohesive look to it. It's not a particularly good looking street. I think hodgepodge sums it up correctly, or at least accurately. So just to the north of here will be Alexandra Park, where we should see some ice skating going on. There's 2 different ice surfaces there. And then just beyond that will be Dundas Street. I don't know the story behind this mural, but it's quite neat to look at. And unfortunately, you'll notice there's quite a lot of tents set up in this park. And some more elaborate structures. There's a Buddhist temple over there on the west side. And here are the skating surfaces. There's one inside the enclosed hockey rink. And there's another outside. It looks like this one is currently undergoing, I guess, what you could call a shift change. There's a look at the Chingkwak Buddhist temple. There should be no more than 25 people on the surface at a time. I think all these people had to reserve well in advance of this to get a spot on the City of Toronto's various websites dedicated to skating in the city. I looked into that and it's actually kind of confusing. It wasn't as straightforward to navigate as I thought it would have been in terms of booking a slot. Maybe I'm just a dummy. And there is a local community center. This is always a slightly rougher, patchier part of town. And I think that's the closest drive-through to downtown Toronto. It's literally across the street at that McDonald's. And this is the intersection of Bathurst and Dundas Street West. That's the Toronto Western Hospital. And to the east of here along Dundas will be Chinatown. Well to the east of here would be Dundas Square and the Eaton Center. There's often a lineup outside of this place. You'd think rather than just have everyone line up, they would have some kind of scheduled appointment system. I guess that would be too logical. There's a new Popeyes to the neighborhood. I walked up here not too long ago in a live stream just for this portion of Bathurst. I remember seeing that new Popeyes. There's an entrance to the hospital. And just on my right is the Kensington Market neighborhood. There's a taco restaurant I've never heard of. Good Hombres. This development is across the street. That's now a supermarket, Winners, and other various retailers. It used to be a place called Cromer Radio. And Walmart made a push to build an urban, smaller form factor location for their stores, and there was a ton of blowback by local residents and businesses.
Station. Please wear a mask and face covering.
And I think there was a bylaw written that limited the maximum size of occupant who could move into that location, specifically with the goal to keep Walmart and other really large-scale retailers out. And that probably went a long ways to preserving the character of this neighborhood. I think that second floor is devoted to Freshco, which is a discount supermarket chain. And there's a Winners, which is very much like Marshall's. It's even owned by the same parent company. They're a store that I have no idea how they'll survive these restrictions in place. They're only allowed to open for curbside pickup, and their entire store is based on rummaging around their stock. So they haven't even tried to open. We're not really sure what kind of web presence they have, given the revolving door nature of their offerings. It's probably not even worth it for them. And there's a beer store and a vape store next to them. This might be purely anecdotal, but I think there was a lot more vape stores before cannabis stores were legalized. And here's where the Cineforum is located. I first came here for a night he put on, I think in the late 90s, where it was a banned cartoon film festival. It's got a neat little theater set up in the living room. And we are approaching College Street. So just on the left is where Little Italy starts. And on the right, this will take you through the top of Kensington Market, over to Spadina, where Chinatown starts. And this building right here is home to Sneaky D's, at least for the time being. Apparently it's being redeveloped into a condo. And Sneaky D's is definitely a well-loved institution. Certainly known for its nachos, beer, and live music. It was originally located up in the annex on Bloor Street, and it's such a well-loved, successful place. I can't imagine why they wouldn't try to relocate. So I think this whole block over here is up for redevelopment. There is space in the new proposal for a music venue. But it's much smaller than what it would be replacing. Perhaps one benefit to someone in their position of all these retailers going under, and bars and restaurants due to the restrictions, is that there might be a nice bounty of locations for them to choose to relocate to. And perhaps the market will be such that landlords are just happy to get a tenant in there, so maybe they won't have such a hard time to relocate. Another bar undergoing that is Betty's on King Street East, formerly the Betty Ford Clinic. It's one of my favorite bars in the city. That too is undergoing redevelopment, or at least their location. And there is King Edward Junior and Senior School. There goes the 511 streetcar heading south. St. Moses and St. Catherine Coptic Orthodox Church. I used to have to write some exams in the Mississauga Coptic Center. Bathurst along this stretch is primarily low-rise residential. A lot of these homes have been sliced up into various units. It's not too far from the University of Toronto, so I think a lot of students find their way around here, or rather live around here. And just up ahead is Ulster Street. And then past that should be Harbour Street, which runs through Harbour Village. I did a walk along Harbour in the fall. It's one of my favorite streets to walk through in the city. That's an interesting looking van. I wonder what that's all about. That's some pretty heavy duty security guys there. Maybe they're transporting black market organs or something like that. Although I guess they wouldn't be calling attention to themselves if they were. It's a rather stupid guess. And there's Purelator. It's a Canadian courier service. So just up ahead here is Harbour Street, and just on the right will be one of the city's few Krispy Kreme locations. And just beyond that will be the Central Tech School. There's a look east down Harbour, and there is the Krispy Kreme. If you do have the original glazed donuts, don't forget to pop them in the microwave for a few seconds before you give them a taste. That makes them so much better. That is Central Tech School just across the street. Although there's a large dome over their athletic field, so we won't get a very good look at the school. but if we could, you might recognize it from a number of movies and TV productions. I think it's been where they filmed Flashpoint, one of the Resident Evil movies, along with one of the Silent Hill movies. I remember there being a movie called Class of 1984 that was filmed there. And probably most famously, it was used for Good Will Hunting. And we're approaching about where this walk is going to end, at Bathurst Street. When I get to Bathurst, just on the left side will be Koreatown, and on the right will be the Annex neighborhood. Those are easily two of my favorite neighborhoods in the city. I even used to live in Koreatown. I'll also be going by Mervish Village on the left side of the street, where the former Honest Heads retailer is, or at least what used to be Mervish Village. There's a look at Central Tech. It's easy to see why they'd use this as the backdrop of so many productions. It's got a rather distinct and grand look to it. And just on the left here is an old church that dates back to the 1880s. And now it's home to Randolph Theatre. I think it used to be the Bathurst Street Theatre. I don't really know what kind of productions they put on in there. That's a rather excellent repurposing of an old church. You get to preserve a grand old building. Lennox Street. This is a new condo development on the right, or at least relatively new. And on the left there's the former home of Honest Heads. Now it's being redeveloped into a new residential community that's primarily rental buildings, which is kind of neat. I think they're kind of under a lot of pressure to find something worthy to replace such an iconic Toronto icon with. Iconic icon. There's some good English for you. My favorite bars in the city fell victim to that redevelopment. It was known as the Victory Cafe. They've opened up a new establishment under the same name in the Annex, just to the east along Bloor Street, but it's really more of a pizza restaurant now than the kind of bar it used to be. Not really sure why they hung on to the name. If they're going to change it so much. Best chicken in town. I will take their word for it. Okay. I've got 8 seconds here. There's a look down the Annex.
What's up, man? Yes, sir. You say
I wonder if the YouTube copyright system will pick that up. It often does pick up when someone's playing a cover song on the street like that. A surprising amount of that gets flagged. I'll get the copyright notice when I upload the video. I wonder if that one will be. Sometimes I just upload a small clip of just the audio from a video just to see if it'll get picked up or not before I upload the whole file. These videos are often 40 to 60 gigs in size. And here is Bathurst Street. I'm just kind of struggling to slide my mask on here. It is a requirement for being on TTC property, although it's one of those things that they don't really bother to enforce at all. That's one of the big criticisms against the province implementing new measures such as curfews is, what's the point if they don't even bother to enforce the things that they have put in place? A lot of people feel that we wouldn't need further measures if they enforced the ones they do have in place. There's someone without a mask on, 2 people. I think that guy just started to put his on because he saw the camera. That's just purely an observation, but so many people have lost everything. It just seems the least they could do is put some teeth into the measures they put in place. And we're at line 2 heading eastbound. I don't think I'm actually going to get on this train. There's a chance I might go back up and live stream. I'm not really sure what I'll do next, but thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this walk up Bathurst. There are links to my Instagram in the description, as well as my Patreon if you wish to support the channel. And you can always look at channel membership on the YouTube page itself. Just go to my main channel page and click join under channel membership to look into that. It's pretty much the same thing as Patreon. But either way, thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe, and I will catch you on the next one.